everybody. I'm Rick Dancer. Welcome to Get Real with Rick Dancer. Tonight, we're going to be talking about something I think is probably one of the most important rights that we have in America today that are in great danger. And why is the Second Amendment so important? Because without the Second Amendment, you don't have a first or a third or anything else. You need the Second Amendment to protect your other rights. And right now, all of those rights are under attack. And in Oregon, people voted in a ballot measure 114. I've talked with you guys in Montana and Washington and Idaho about this before too. But there's a big push to fight this thing. So we're going to talk to a couple of guys from Eugene, Oregon, who have a vested interest in this because they're gun owners, just like the rest of us. Our sponsors. BS Free MD, Tim and May are doctors out of Lebanon Sweet Home. During the dark time, they started doing podcasts because they're medical doctors, and they started doing radical podcasts about the truth about medicine. And now they're doing all kinds of shows. If you have not watched them yet, they're one of our sponsors. You really need to go check them out. They also have a newsletter you should sign up for. They go farther than I do because they don't post it on Facebook. So they are radical and they're amazing, and they're really putting out some great content. So check them out. Also, Chris Dental Family Dentistry. Dr. Michael Bratland is a wonderful guy. He really believes in freedom of speech. He stands up to against mandates. He thinks you should be able to decide what's good for your body, your choice. He believes that. If you're looking for a dentist that believes what you believe, he is your man. And our other sponsor tonight, Montana Oral Surgery and Implant Center, Dental Implant Center. I'm going to play a video at the end of this for you, kind of show how dental implants work. It's super interesting. But if you're looking for, and you're in Montana, they're out of Helena. They're also in Butte. They're also in Bozeman, and they are also in Great Falls or Billings. But they are the folks that can handle that for you. And Albert Taylor, Endless Possibilities, an organization in Eugene, Springfield that works with people with different abilities. They have group homes. They do in-home services. They're always looking for people to work with them because what they do is tough. It's hard work, but it's also one of those jobs where I think a lot of us learned during the dark time that what you do matters more than where you do it. And these folks are awesome. So if you're looking for work, they're a great possibility. All right, so let's get on with the show. I'm going to bring on Derek LeBlanc. Hello, Derek. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
And I'll have you kind of tell, we'll give you and Adam, and this is Adam Bratz, and he's the owner of Mazama Sporting Goods. And Derek, you do all kinds of training and safety courses, right?
Yes, I'm a gun rights advocate. You know, I'm a firearms instructor, and I also run a nonprofit that teaches kids firearm safety.
Okay, so I'll tell you how I heard about this. One of my former clients, a friend of mine out of Oregon, he called up and said, "You have got to talk to Adam over at Mazama Sporting Goods because they're doing they're really pushing on this Measure 114." And so I called up Adam, and that's how they got the two of you. So Adam, explain to people what Measure 114 does.
Well, 114, what it does is it requires a person to go get a permit to purchase, and that process is not in place yet. So people are unable to get a permit to purchase. It also does some other things that people aren't very happy about.
So for me to even get a gun, I have to go get a permit to buy a gun in Oregon.
And that's even if you already have a concealed handgun license. That's even though you're going to have to do a background check when you go to buy the gun. You have to get a background check in order to get a permit to purchase and do fingerprints and do live fire safety training.
How did Oregon voters, I'm just going to say my own language, fall for this? Derek, what was either one? How did?
So basically, they were lied. They were sold a fake bill of goods from the very beginning. The people, I've been part of this process since it was a ballot initiative, which was ballot IP-17. And so what they did is they had 500 words in the ballot pamphlet, and they could not sell this in an honest way to the Oregonians. And so that's why we're stuck with this. Now we're stuck in court. We've already sued in federal court. Now we're going back into state court next month. And I mean, we're literally millions of dollars into litigation costs here, and not a single life saved. You know, it's a mess. It was based on lies.
So did they tell people that if we do this, it's going to make buying a gun harder? And so then people will catch those, which I never understand, because like a crook or a murderer or a bad guy or a bad woman is going to follow the rules to get a gun.
Yeah, and that's the problem here and they wanted to put something in place to want to talk about background checks. We already have background checks. And so that's what was misleading to the public, is they made it sound in the language that no gun goes through a background check. But because of previous laws, every gun that's sold either a private party or through an FFL like Mazama's is required to go through a 4473 form, through a background check through the Oregon State Police. And so it's a total scam.
So Adam, you guys, because you sell sporting goods, fishing goods, hunting goods, guns, what does this do to you?
Well, it causes a lot of confusion and uncertainty right now, just because at the time when this ballot measure would have taken place on December 8th of last year, it would have immediately halted all gun sales across the entire state of Oregon. There are no agencies that are issuing permits to my knowledge. And because of that, there would be zero gun sales until there's a process in place.
And now what is it, Adam, about taking classes? Don't they have to also, isn't there a class required as part of this, or Derek, or is that just my imagination?
There is. And I actually took the class the other day as for a project that I'm working on, and it's basically just an online CHL class, which, I understand we're talking about liability. We look at the number of Oregonians that own guns, far more own guns than actually have a concealed handgun license. So this whole process is it's antiquated, it's outdated, and it's actually a second form of a concealed handgun license type process.
So Adam, if you sell guns, since you sell guns, do you find that there's a lot of people, especially first-time gun buyers? I mean, if you didn't own a gun in Oregon, you probably would have no idea that they do a background check or any of that. Is that what you experience in your store?
People understand that the likelihood they're going to have to do a background check to buy a gun at a commercial store is probably in place. But they're certainly confused about what process is required at this point.
So what else does Measure 114 do in terms of magazines?
Derek, go ahead and tell them.
Well, so it restricts every magazine basically in the state of Oregon. And so what they did, another thing was very misleading, is they put in the language that every magazine in the state of Oregon, even if it's under 10 rounds, because that was the cap, was 10 rounds. But the way they worded it is if it has a removable base plate, that magazine's now going to be illegal. And to all the research that we've done is there's very few magazines that are commercially available that do not have a removable base plate. So it basically puts us all in a position where if we're carrying this magazine that we're thinking we're compliant because it holds 10 rounds or less, we're committing a Class A misdemeanor, which is up to 1 year in jail, so 364 days in jail and a $6,200 fine max penalty.
So do the people that come up with this shit know exactly what it's doing?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a plan.
Absolutely. This is from, the Giffords campaign. These are professional people that write laws. They test it in different parts of the country. It's stuck here in Oregon because they have Lift Every Voice Oregon, and they are basically just paid shills. And all they do is gather signatures, get it on the ballot, and then they use their millions of dollars and they pump money in the state to take away your rights.
So how come do you think Oregon always seems to be the state that they go to for not only gun legislation, but ridiculous, stupid laws that mean nothing? It's like, are you guys like test dummies?
Absolutely. we Oregonians always say we're free thinkers, right? We're rugged individualists until it comes to something like Measure 110, which basically, decriminalizes all, methamphetamine and heroin for personal use, which has led to an uptick in, property crimes, violent crimes. And, realistically, my 17 round magazine, which I have now, is more relevant than it's ever been because of the stuff they've already put into place.
Well, I mean, what's kind of funny living in Montana too is, here guns, you don't even think about it. You can take them anywhere you want. But I laugh because recently Oregonians finally get to pump their own gas. It's like, for a state that's the first to come up with a bottle bill, it's some real, to first to open the beaches to the public. I think we used to be a really cutting edge kind of place, but then it's stuff like that where it's like, and your treatment of alcohol too is really, really funny, because here you can walk down the street with a beer, and in Oregon, it's like they put that little yellow tape around and then that's a safe area. So what is your big concern for it with this thing? Because if the courts hadn't have blocked it, Adam, you wouldn't be selling guns right now.
We would probably be out of business by this point.
And so how long, what's the next step in the court case? Where does that go?
Well, there's the federal court is over, but it's being appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court, and now we're waiting on the state trial, which is coming up next month.
And Derek, what's that state trial going to look like?
So we're prepping for it right now, and so it's going to be in Harney County. We've already got a couple victories in Harney County. The judge over there, gave us a temporary restraining order, which basically halted everything to this point. And so now we just have to sell it to him again, and then just say, hey, this is bad for Oregon. There's not a program in place. The class that I just took online, the county sheriffs just voted to take that class offline because they don't have the rest of the permit program ready to go. And so there's really, once that thing goes offline, there's going to be zero ways for people to be able to be compliant and actually get their permit to purchase.
And for people who are not from Oregon, or actually for people who are from Oregon, Harney County is the largest county in southeastern Oregon, and it's the least populated county in Oregon. So you've got rural people who give a damn about their gun rights, for sure.
Absolutely.
So if that judge rules in your favor, then what happens?
So most likely it'll get kicked up to the Oregon State Supreme Court, which is not friendly to us as gun owners, and
appointed mostly by the last super liberal governor of Oregon, Kate Brown. So all those people most of the whole court is almost on that side of the fence.
Yeah, and Kotek just added another lady that has zero judge experience, but she's another shill. And so what's going to happen there is if it goes to the state Supreme Court, there's a good chance that they could, if they rule a certain way, they could kick it back to Harney County so he could re-rule again, depending on what he does in next month in state court, and then it would go to the Ninth Circuit where the federal case is.
And the Ninth Circuit Court is not friendly to any kind of amendment values like that either. Could this end up in the Supreme Court? Should this end up in
Absolutely.
the Supreme Court?
Absolutely. It's going to cost millions, but yeah, ultimately it will go to the Supreme Court.
So is that the game, do you think, is these groups tight? Because if you didn't have people like you fighting it and Mazama and people funding it, they would just walk all over you because an average person can't afford to fight them. So you end up a whole state, making it super difficult to buy a gun. So what do you say to those people who say, well, we need more safety. We need to make sure people can't get their guns so easily?
I would say enforce the law. We have 22,000 gun laws on the books currently, and we have prosecutors that are letting people out of jail early without proper, trying them, especially urban environments like Eugene, up in Portland, they're not prosecuting. And so we should be prosecuting gun crimes to a higher extent than what's happening right now, instead of focusing on law-abiding citizens.
Adam, what are you thinking? Oh, I agree with that. We have all the laws necessary to work with our society and stuff. What's the problem is that the gun laws aren't being enforced against the people that are violating them.
Unless you're a regular citizen who just has a gun and you don't use it for bad purposes, then you get,
Well,
you know what I mean? That's how it feels. It's like law-abiding citizens are being penalized, and then the courts and the district attorneys aren't even going after the folks who are using them in the wrong way.
well, a prime example is Hunter Biden. It's like there's a separate set of laws in the country, and so there's people that commit gun crimes that are not prosecuted. Yet one of us, if we commit a gun crime, we're going to be prosecuted. So there's definitely different set of justice here in Oregon and across the country.
So Adam, at your, like in your office at Mazama Sporting Goods, when people come in there, I mean, I know because I used to work with you. You have lots of guns. What is the biggest confusion you have from a new gun owner? I'm curious.
The confusion is what the process is to purchase a gun, and we had a perfectly workable process before, which is what we're currently doing. Everybody goes through a background check, but some of the problems with the new measure are that it creates a public registry, for one. A lot of people are unhappy with that and are no longer as willing to purchase guns. They don't want their neighbors to be able to look up online and see what they've purchased.
What? Wait a minute. Okay, so wait a second. So this law 114 also includes a public registry. So my private purchase of guns is now public knowledge to everyone who wants to know.
It's like they're trying to shame gun owners into not purchasing.
That is such bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why do they get to know? The last thing I want is somebody casing Rick Dancer's house and then understanding, oh, wait, he has 4 guns. So, I mean, I guess in one way, then they'd know. But they're going to be then they know what they're up against. So that is such, what happened to my right?
Your privacy.
My privacy.
Just think about, there's that single mother that maybe had a domestic issue in the past and she escaped that abuser, and that firearm is her equalizer that she can protect her kids. Now that person can publicly search, find out where she's living, and then attack her and try to kill her.
That is horrible.
And actually,
I bet you. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, Derek's bringing up another good point to expand on sort of what he said. Think about those people whose lives are in jeopardy like that. They cannot easily, if the new program's in place, it literally takes up to months to get a permit to purchase. Imagine if you were afraid for your life, you have no ability to go out and purchase a handgun like you do today. You have to make an appointment and then go do all your training classes, then do a background check. And that includes thumbprints, which have to be done by the FBI. And the FBI has already told Oregon, we're not having a part of this.
Okay, so explain that to me more. This is like unpacking the most system I've heard.
The 114 requires that part of the background check is a fingerprint check, and that's conducted by the FBI, and the FBI does not want anything to do with 114.
And so the problem with this is the people that wrote the bill, they have no inner workings and inner knowledge of how it works. And so this bill does not meet the requirements for the FBI to perform the background check because of administrative rule.
Okay, so in a common sense sort of world, which I understand, when you get outside the border of Idaho, that kind of goes away. But but wouldn't that right there, so if you created a law, the FBI won't participate, wouldn't that in a normal world kill the law? Because we shouldn't be having to go through all these court cases. If the law was written poorly and the FBI is not even going to do it, what are you going to do? You can't make them. So you know what I'm saying? So
this whole 114 is a whole series of roadblocks that I feel is meant to slow firearm sales, and it's effectively already doing that. We're already down almost 25% for this year just because of the confusion. At one point, the state was taking several months to conduct background checks to get back to us. People didn't want to wait for 2 months. They didn't want to wait. Now they've caught up on that process because sales have slowed down, and there might be other reasons. But it's just been really confusing for everybody, and it's, in my opinion, completely unnecessary. It doesn't make sense for someone who has a concealed handgun license to have to go get permission and go through this whole background check process again so he can go to the store to run another three background checks to buy one firearm. That's ridiculous.
And if you're a bad dude or dudette, you're not going to go through any of this process. You're going to buy it off the street, and so it's bullshit. And they're not covering anything. Let's go back to your point, though. I think that Derek and Adam, you guys both made a really good point here. So let's talk about the woman who's being abused by her husband, and she needs tomorrow to go down and get a gun so she feels safer because her life's in. So now you put her at risk for 2 months. And what happens when she gets killed? Then does all the people that wrote this bill, do they come out and say, "Oh gosh, we're sorry"? Hell no.
No.
That isn't even on their radar. This isn't about making people safer. It's about having more control over people, because what people need to think about in Oregon and all over the country is, if your government has more guns than the people, you're in deep shit. Deep shit. You know, especially with what's going on with the tyrannical stuff going on in our country right now. It's like, if people need to be able to protect themselves, and I think everybody should be asking themselves, so why do they keep coming up with these more extensive rules? This isn't to protect and stop school shootings. That's not what this is about at all. This is about getting control over people and making sure that they have to live within it, so they can start telling you what you need to do. It's really pretty scary. I mean, if you think about it, and I'm not like a conspiracy theorist, but I'm a smart guy, and I can't do fractions, but I can sure add, and 2 and 2 in my world is still 4, So what do you do at this point? Like with Oregonians, so right now they can buy guns and it doesn't matter. The law is on hold, basically.
The measure's on hold, and we're still relying on the current system, which is perfectly effective, which is, a federal background check, and the state also approves that background check. So it's already several levels of background check.
So people who are confused about that should know now's the time you can go do this without all that rigmarole.
Right. And right now, because the state's caught up on the background check system, and the fact that the measure is on hold now, is the golden opportunity to come in and get what you want and be able to take it home in a reasonable amount of time.
When I got mine, and I went in to get my concealed weapons permit, it was a year to get it.
Yeah.
It was I got my gun in January, and my appointment was January 10th, the following year. And so I moved, and it was like, well, I don't have to do this,
What you experienced with your concealed handgun license is the fact that a lot of municipalities are already short-staffed. They don't have the funding to staff an office, around the clock, or enough to process those concealed handgun licenses quickly. Imagine once they're required, each municipality is required they're not required to participate, but they are going to be required to be used if they're going to be issuing permits. And I don't think our local sheriff is prepared for this. I don't think he's got the staffing or the facilities to do live training. And across the state, most agencies are already saying they want no part of this.
So they don't even have enough people in Lane County, where you guys are, to patrol the back streets, the rural county. And so now you're going to put one more thing on them and require this system. And what's so stupid is it's just we live in a world where we're tired of red tape, and this is just additional red tape that does, and it has no purpose except to stop the sale of guns, which goes against the Constitution and the Second Amendment.
Yeah. Well, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. I mean, through this whole process, I mean, they lied about how much it was going to cost. They didn't know how much it was going to cost. And it finally came out in court that the first year they're estimating $50 million and then $42 million annually to keep this this program going. And, look at Harney County. Harney County has 5 deputies that patrol 10,000 square miles. Okay.
Yeah.
They are the the permit issuer. They would not have the staffing. They would have to pull somebody off the road just to do background checks or to train somebody how to fire a gun just so these people could go buy a gun. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous for the public. It's dangerous for gun owners because it puts us in a position where in the database, people could know whether we were approved or if we were denied. And so, they could tell if that house has a gun or not. So that's another part of that database that's really, really dangerous to the public.
See, and I think what people don't understand is what that translates into. Because, I experienced this with the PPL loans,
Mm-hmm.
So government forces people to shut down, offers a PPP loan, which probably all of us took something or did something with that because we lost business. And with the idea that you would get it back. More than likely, if you could prove this, and this, you'd get it back. So then I speak out about forgiving college loans, and people went online and publicly told how much me and several of my clients got in PPP loans. So they're blasting that personal finance information out over the internet, which is not something nobody else's fucking business.
They'll do the same with the gun.
That's what I'm saying. Is
Mm-hmm.
people don't understand. So, guess what? Rick Dancer has 4 guns. He tried to get a 5th one, they wouldn't let him. And then what do people say? Oh, wonder if he has a criminal background. Maybe his wife left him. It's personal information that nobody should have access to.
Not the public.
And they will use it. And that's what people need to understand. You don't know when something comes up in your life, that something happens. Let's say you work at Trader Joe's and you piss off a customer and they see your name and they look you up. Then they go home and look up your record online about how many guns you own. And then they put out, this kid Johnson Brown was rude to me at Trader Joe's, and I found out he has 5 guns in his house.
He's a gun nut.
Yeah, he's a gun nut. He's a right-wing gun nut, homophobe, transphobe, him, her phobe. And it sounds far out, but trust me, that's what they do.
Then they red flag you, and then they come in, they confiscate everything. They say you're a danger to yourself or the public. Now you're unarmed. You're defenseless. That's the way this works. As scary as it is here for Oregonians, we've been living under this tyranny for the last almost a year now. For Montana, I want to sound the alarm. This stuff is coming to your state. Okay. We have to be mindful. We have to watch what happened in Tennessee. We have red flag laws that they're trying to pass. This is the new thing for these anti-gun groups, is they're trying to pass, red flag laws that are going to go all over the country. They're going to come back here to Oregon. We already have some, but they're going to probably try to strengthen them because of what happened with the Bruin decision.
So what do you say? You've told Montanans. What do you say to the Oregonians? What can they do at this point? What should people be doing to help you guys? And well, honestly, to help themselves. I mean, to protect their Second Amendment rights. What should they be doing? How can they help?
Well, first of all, if you see something on the next ballot, be sure you understand it, because this one was put on the ballot so misleading that we've got a lot of customers come in and say, yeah, gosh, I did vote for that because I did not understand it. It sounded like a good idea. And they wrote that ballot measure title specifically to be confusing. If you read it, made it sound like background checks were not really required now, and they should be required, and they're going to put limitations on some magazines. It said some, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that's really not the case. It's the majority. But this new measure creates more hurdles from the retail standpoint. Imagine if you wanted to sell part of your gun collection because you thought you had too many or something, or you're retiring, and then imagine that you wanted one of your guns back. It's already your gun. You just brought it down for me to sell for you. Now I have to say, I'm sorry, I cannot transfer this gun back to you under a regular background check. First, you need to go and do live fire training and make sure you know how to. What if this guy's a gun collector who's in a wheelchair or something and doesn't have any interest in going out shooting? he can't get his gun back unless he goes out and proves proficiency and all that. It's his gun. He already owns it. The state would be denying this person their property.
So Derek, as somebody who teaches kids and adults how to properly use guns, what's the scariest thing about this to you?
Well, I think it sets a very dangerous precedent because it tells the government to tell private citizens what their life is worth, right? It tells, people like Ab and I saying, you're right to have a magazine that holds only, 10 rounds. And that's good. You're supposed to be accept that, right? I think it's important to know is my magazine capacity has no bearing on whether I'm going to be a danger to myself or others, right? So it's something where we have to understand that the people that write these bills have no fundamental understanding of firearms. And so I feel that if they are going to write legislation like this, especially that's going to be restrictive like this, they should have the basic knowledge on how the gun functions. And so it's just they live in this vacuum where they're afraid of guns. We call them hoplophobes, right? But hoplophobe is somebody that's fearful of an inanimate object, and that's a gun. And so they need to understand, what we go through every day to protect ourselves because of bad policies. And also, we talk about proper storage, all this stuff that the with these rights, the Second Amendment, come great responsibilities. And we all, as gun owners, take all of these responsibilities very seriously. And we're not the ones committing these crimes. We should be cracking down on the people that are committing these gun crimes and holding them to a higher standard and making examples of them. And that would help with this process.
I remember when I got my first 9mm, and I took it out, just took a picture, that there's no magazine in it, but you couldn't tell. Mm-hmm. And I had my finger near the trigger. Oh my God. you should have heard the outcry from gun owners. Yeah. And some of them were nice. Some of them were not. But the whole point was these people, you can't have your finger near that trigger ever. Even if the magazine's not in it. It was like, and I remember in my gun class, they did say that. But I was taking a picture and I thought, there's no magazine and there's no bullet. I checked. But it was like, and I thought, afterwards, I wasn't pissed because I kind of went, that's how seriously most and responsible most gun owners are. The people who aren't, I don't think people who are killing people are really paying much attention to what's going on like that.
And they're not following the law either. So imagine you being restricted to 10 chances to defend yourself when two bad guys are not following the law and they're loaded up.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought of that. So I got 10 chances and this guy's got 12 or whatever.
30
rounds. So how is that really going to stop? What's so stupid about this is how does that stop a school shooting?
It's not.
If you want to stop school shootings, perhaps you should invest in mental health and be looking at our schools and make sure that kids, because there hasn't been a story that I've heard that somebody didn't say, Billy Bob had a problem and somebody didn't say anything. So instead of but we do this all the time as a culture with issues. Instead of blaming, I love the hypocrisy of blaming an inanimate object for killing someone. A gun has never killed anyone. A person using a gun has. So you have to, it's not the gun's fault. It's that some person is making a choice. And so that would be like, okay, so, I know somebody who got killed with a pencil. So we're going to have to get rid of all pencils. I also know a lot of people who die in car accidents. So we probably shouldn't have any cars on the road anymore. I know somebody who died, I really do, of poisoning from milk. So dairy cows need to all be shot and no more milk. And just to be sure, we probably should stop cheese as well because, it's a dairy product. It just is just ridiculous. It's an inanimate object and people are taking it and blaming it and not the person. We fail as a culture, don't you think, to really hold people accountable?
Yeah.
Yep. It's not my fault, and it's not your fault. And so that's what we have to be better. We have to do better on when it comes to outreach and education and show the people that are in the middle that might be voting in favor of this stuff, that no, this is what this means. This is the impact. This is from a fiscal standpoint, where it's going to take funding from mental health services, it's going to take it from, the homelessness. I mean, this is a serious deal. And so it needs to be treated that way. And the fact of the matter was so misleading is I feel that there should be some kind of accountability there for those. And it comes down to Shemaiah Fagan, the lady that took all the pot money. She was the one that allowed it to get on the ballot. It never should have been on the ballot. And she was the one that forced it, because the Oregon Constitution, the way the ballot initiative process works, is it's supposed to go into effect 30 days upon passage. And so she was the one that kind of forced it to go into effect. And that's where we're lucky we got the TRO out of Harney County. And so this whole thing is just the corruption here in Oregon. It came full circle, and now all of us are paying the price.
So how can people help your group, Derek?
Well, I feel we need to donate. We donate to Oregon Farmers Federation. We need their stuff to stay, because they're in federal court, and if we lose and they have to pull out, because it's all war of attrition. Is they're trying to just bankrupt companies. Bankrupt Oregon Farmers Federation. Obviously, trying to bankrupt Mazamas. They're trying to basically make it harder for these businesses to stay in business, to help with these fights.
They're using taxpayer money against the taxpayers.
Absolutely. And it's all money that we've already put into the system as well. So it's another scam.
Derek, Adam, thank you so much for coming on. I honestly, when I first moved here, the questions I got, because it's 114 passed about maybe a year before I came over here, but people would come up and say, so is it true that you guys legalize drugs with 110? And I'd go, embarrassed. Yeah, but let me explain. That's why I moved here, And then the second one was, what about this other measure where you have to have a class to even, or you have to go through this whole permitting process just to get a gun? They couldn't believe that really passed. So I guess the lesson to all of us, not just Oregonians, but God, educate yourself on what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no. And if it feels good, it might not be. That's, I think, the biggest problem I've seen in Oregon as a newscaster and all that is we're so easily susceptible to, it just, it feels like we're trying, like 110, it's like, well, they sold it as you're going to be getting drug counseling for these people. Well, but the bullshit was, like, you think a drug addict is really going to go get a hotline and then go look for help? You talk to anybody who's been addicted to drugs, they're not going to do it until they're ready. So this bill was bullshit from the beginning, and the governor's still pushing it. Say, well, let's give it another chance. We'll change it around a little bit. No, cut bait and move on. And
I saw something today that they have 70% in favor of trying to repeal Measure 110, which gives me hope, right? That we can get that thrown out. That's going to help solve a lot of problems here. I think one thing that's really, really important for everybody watching is we have to show up and vote.
Yep.
And there was 180,000 Republicans that sat home on their thumbs because they didn't like their candidate, and that's what gave us Tina Kotek and also gave us Measure 114. So we have to show up and vote, even though we feel like our voices don't matter. They really do. We have to,
because that's the lie, is that they don't matter. And you're right. I love this conversation. This is fun. But you're seeing that right now. I'm hearing that with. And it doesn't matter. Who cares? I would never vote for Biden, so it doesn't matter. But with Trump and them, people are saying, if it's not Trump, I'm not voting. Or if it's not DeSantis, I'm not voting. And it's like, you are a worthless piece of garbage if that's your attitude, because you're basically voting then for Joe Biden if you do that. And people have to start thinking about that. I know you're such a damn moral person, and I only think Ron DeSantis is the greatest thing, so I'm going to stand my ground. Well, what you did is just put everybody else in our country, our savings, our retirement, everything in jeopardy because of your valiant stand on America. I mean, it's crazy. People really, I think we're getting to that point, though, don't you? I mean, I think it's so frustrating right now that people are. I hope. And maybe that's what it takes. Maybe it takes getting to the bottom so that you can find yourself in the hole and you can start crawling back out.
I don't know how much further we can go.
No, and that's why Kathy and I left, because we were just going, and that does, like, I'll see something online that they're charging you guys to pay for homeless stuff. again, millions. And I'm just going, you know how good it feels, honey, that we know our tax dollars are not going to that. And when you lived there, it was like you felt so frustrated because like, I don't agree with this and I'm being forced to pay for something that I think is a totally the wrong direction. And there's no power. So hopefully you're going to see some change. I wish Betsy Johnson would have got elected. She's a friend of mine. She's badass.
She's better than the alternative.
She's badass.
You know, one last thing that might kind of blow your mind, Rick, is there's actually talk and possible pending stuff coming that's going to make it illegal to kill any animals for food. And that's across the state. Wow. We're talking about fishing. We're talking about hunting. You can't kill an animal. It's taking a life. That makes you a mean, cruel person.
What about cattle?
I don't know all the specifics, but it's not.
Yeah, I think it's IP13. It's something that probably should be looked into.
Because I remember they tried this before. They were going around to go to Colorado, Oregon. They're always test states trying to see it. Yeah, cruelty to animals and stuff. People better think about that one because where are you going to get we already, look how expensive food is. Now you want to take more off the market.
Hey, if you can't hunt legally, then you don't need a gun.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Oh my God. Well,
Boom.
You can't all move to Montana.
Yeah, I'd say you're full. Say you're full.
Yeah, where there is no room. If you tried to take away hunting rights in Montana,
don't do that.
I don't think you'd last very long. And people will just go to other states and then they'll make up a law that you can't bring a carcass from another state back into, you're transporting. We'll leave the border of Mexico and United States open, but we'll shut the borders down to hauling hunting animals across that border, because animals are more important than human beings. You guys, this has been really fun and nice talking to you. And thank you for shedding light on this thing for people. I'm sure that my Montana audience is sitting here going, holy shit.
It's coming. It's coming. You got to stop it. Hold that line.
Okay. Derek, LeBlanc, and Adam Bratz, thank you so much for talking about this with us. We appreciate your time.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. See you guys later. All right, folks. So here's the big warning for people in other states that you don't live in. Like Derek said, it's coming. And when you start to see the signs, you cannot. The thing that caught Oregon, and I hope my Oregon people don't think, I don't hate Oregon. I hate what happens to it. You have an apathetic voting public. And when people are in apathy, the other side's always going to take advantage of it. And then you wake up one day. I used to see this happen at city council meetings all the time. Is people would go to the city and then there would be a hearing and nobody would show up. And then it would become law. And then people in town would get all pissed and go, what happened? What was it? Well, there was a hearing and you had a Boy Scout meeting that night, or you had a dance rehearsal that night and you didn't pay attention. And that's what they're banking on, that you're not going to be paying attention. They're going to play off your feelings and then they're going to slide something under the gate and you're going to say yes to it when you didn't mean to. So that's the lesson you need to learn. One of our sponsors of the show is Montana Oral Surgeons. I just went down there. In fact, the doctor you're going to meet is an avid hunter, an avid fisherman. He's a typical Montanan, but he just happens to be an oral surgeon as well. But I learned some stuff about implants that my dad always had false teeth. So now they call them dentures, but false teeth. And with implants, they showed us how this works. And I think it's really interesting. So I want you to take a look at this.
The implants can be used in a huge variety of ways now. So they can be used as a single tooth to replace a single tooth. They can also be used to replace multiple teeth. Sometimes, you can use 4 implants to replace like all the top teeth, for example, and things like that. But on a very basic level, they're basically a little titanium screw and it goes in the jaw where the tooth was, and then you get a tooth made that attaches to that screw. The gray part is the part that goes in the jawbone itself, and then that silver collar is what goes through the gum tissue to provide a profile for the tooth to eventually get made. So then after it's all healed, the dentist will make a tooth, and basically the tooth will have a screw hole through it, and the tooth connection will basically fit just like this blue piece, only there will be a screw channel through there. And so if you imagine there'd be a wide tooth coming off of this, and they screw that right in there. Well, they're better for a multitude of reasons. When you're talking about like replacing a single tooth, they're better because they feel like a tooth. You can chew on them like a tooth. And the best thing about them now compared to like the conventional other ways is that they're not touching or grinding down other teeth to get some sort of replacement in there.
So again, that's Montana Oral Surgeons and Dental Implant Center right in Helena. They also have offices in Butte and Billings and Bozeman. Take this, share it on your page so other people know. If you're in Montana, put it out as a warning. If you're in Oregon, put it out as understanding so people can be educated. Just share it on your pages, share it on your social media. I'm Rick Dancer. We will see you on Tuesday with much more. Have a great